You've all been blessed. Welcome. Welcome to All Access Pass, the Catholic version, apparently. Very glad to have you with us here in the room. I'm Jason, your cruise host, as always. Sir, you're standing in my shot. Grab a seat. You brought it right up into the fire exit. I see how you work. That's fine. There's always one of you. This is All Access Pass. This is a chance for me to sit with some of your favorite artists, get to know them, and chat a little bit. And today, I'm sitting with an absolute legend. Look at this man right here. This is as good as it gets. Put your hands together for the one and only Mr. Don McLean. Thank you. First and foremost, it is high time that we finally got you on the Rock and Romance cruise. I'm glad.
Great. I love the audience, and I love the little venue, the theater there. It's like a mini, performance place, center. That has very good sound too.
You've played for monster crowds, hundreds of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. What's it like to play in front of 1,000 at a time?
Oh, I do a lot of that.
Do you?
Oh no, I play a lot of theaters. I also sometimes play much bigger places, but no, I love a place like that, and the sound is very good. But as I say, you feel like it reach out. I love that. It feels like a little Carnegie Hall or one of those places.
There's an intimacy to it.
It's well thought out.
You've played some monster shows. You've played, you were with Garth Brooks in the Park. That was, what, 600,000 people or something like that?
It was a million people.
A million people is what it was? Good Lord.
It's the only time I ever felt safe in Central Park. I wouldn't go there normally.
Well, yeah, who would? Why would you? If you don't mind, let's take a walk down memory lane a little bit before we jump into it.
That's where I live.
I think that's where we all live with you.
I live on memory lane.
Am I correct in understanding that your interest in music happened around 5 years old? You're pretty young when you got an interest to start.
5?
5, is that about the time?
Well, I could sing almost immediately. My mother was Italian and my father was Scottish. Yeah.
That's a combo.
Strange comedy. Jay Leno was the same way, by the way. He has a Scottish mother and an Italian father, I think, but he also came from New Rochelle, where I came from. And, but my mother always said that she could tell I would sing, because she was Italian, and she liked music, and she thought that was a wonderful gift. My father thought it was an impediment to becoming a civilized person.
Well, as you do.
And so he was against, really thought it was just childish falderall, getting in the way of studies and important things. He wanted me to be important, and I guess whatever, not a misfit, which I am. Unfortunately for him, he never found that out. But
yeah, you lost your father quite young. Forgive me for.
Yeah, my father died when I was 15, and this has been a story now that's been repeated. There's a documentary movie called The Day the Music Died, the story of Don McLean's American Pie. Mm-hmm. And it took 2 years to make, and it's on Paramount Plus. You can stream it. If you go on Amazon, you can buy it if you like the song. And it was quite an interesting experience for me. I've had documentaries made about me before and lots of stuff like that, but this tells the whole story. Yeah. Basically, once I saw Elvis Presley when I was 11, I started putting together the idea of singing and playing the guitar.
Sure.
And my father did not like Elvis Presley, but I brought much worse people into the house. I brought Chuck Berry. Bo Diddley.
Deplorables.
Bo Diddley and my father, you can't imagine how far apart those universes are.
Two opposite humans.
Yeah, so it was terrifying, actually. To bring Bo Diddley, Little Richard into the house. I'm telling you, that was... So right away, when I was just 12 or something, they had pretty much lost me.
Yeah,
to the dark side. I wasn't on that track to be the West Point guy with the,
Is that what they wanted? They wanted a military track? Yeah.
Well,
something respectable.
My father and my uncle, sometimes we lived in New Rochelle. It wasn't far from West Point, which is on the Hudson River, and occasionally we would take a trip and watch West Point wrestling.
Oh.
And those were, and you go to the campus and everything, and my uncle and my father were very impressed, and it was an impressive place, and it still is, but back in 1960, it was incredibly impressive. And later on, I was on a swimming team for about 5 years when I was a teenager, and the lifeguards were all from West Point because the coach was the coach of the West Point swim team. So I got to know these guys and a little bit better. But anyway, that's going ahead somewhat. But the guitar, seeing Elvis with the guitar on the front of the, I think it was a TV guide. He had a red shirt on.
Sure. Yeah, the iconic photo.
Picture. Oh my God.
Yeah, the
those
iconic
pictures,
photo.
Those pictures from 1956, 57. I don't care whatever Elvis did after that.
Yeah.
That's the Elvis that gets to me when I see that guy. And I thought to myself, man, if I could just, play a few chords and I could entertain people. And so that's how it started.
And you got your first guitar around that time and
just around that time. In fact, it was odd because my father is the one who encouraged me to do it, and in a backhanded way. We had some friends, and the man next door played the ukulele, and he was from the leftover from the 20s.
As you do.
Ain't Gonna Rain No More, No More, and these kind of things with a ukulele, coonskin coat and all that stuff.
All the get up.
So he would come over to the house and bring his baritone ukulele and play little tunes. Ain't gonna rain no more, no more. It ain't gonna. So, and I was watching him. I said, because I was already looking at the bigger guitar.
Sure.
I said, how the heck do you do that? Oh, no problem. Just put your finger right here and you get this chord. And here's this other chord and here's this other chord. Well, I got a little ukulele in about the 5th grade, I guess. And then I was ready to get a guitar because I'd been to a friend's house, and he said, we were out playing. We always were outside. Nobody was ever inside. Never.
It wasn't
and if
allowed.
you were inside, your parents threw you out.
Yeah.
They said, you must be sick. Are you okay? Because you were never in the house. So we were playing, and we said, come on over to my house. I've got a guitar. I must have been 12. So I said, come on, you don't have a guitar. Yes, I do. So I go down to the basement, and there's this instrument, and he says, I said, well, can you play it? Oh, yeah, I can play a few things. And I said, well, what do you think? Can you teach me something? He said, well, I'm going to teach you an E chord, and then an A chord, and then a B7th chord, those 3 chords. So once you know E, A, and B7th, you can sing 500 songs.
Yeah.
So right that day, I was off to the races. And I told my father, I said, well, I want to buy a baritone ukulele, like George Andrews was his name. And he said, why don't you go all the way and get a guitar? So he's the one that caused this whole thing to happen. And
so he's responsible for where we are today.
I got the guitar, and that was the end. I didn't study anymore. And
School goes by the wayside. Did you take lessons, or were you all self-taught?
I can't be taught anything. I was about 16 years old. I had practiced, and I loved a certain performer named Josh White, who was very unusual because Josh was, in fact, I'm going to be inducting him into the South Carolina Musicians Hall of Fame in April, and I'm very excited about this because Josh White was blacklisted in the 50s. He's probably one of the most important characters in black history in America, way before Martin Luther King. Very important person. And his music, and he was also a star before Nat King Cole. He had a movie contract. He had a hit called One Meatball. And it was very popular in the 40s. I got to know him. I became fascinated with his guitar style. He would arrange every song. It wasn't just like when I knew some of the other folk people, they'd play the guitar, say, this land is your land, this land, it's like nothing,
Sure.
But Josh would, if he played a tune, it would have a beginning and a middle and a way that it was arranged. You could take that arrangement and actually orchestrate it to a big orchestra because it was basically a template for an arrangement. It fascinated me. That's what I did. So if you hear my songs like Vincent or The Grave or Castles in the Air, and I Love You So, those are arranged around the guitar because of my interest in Joshua and the way he approached his music with his guitar, which nobody else did. Nobody. And so I had these arrangements made. And I was 16, so I was a junior in high school, sophomore or something like that. And I noticed that in the room there was this echo because it was a kind of a cinder block room, and I'd go in there usually singing. I'm always singing, and I would think, oh, and when nobody was in the room, I would sing, something. Woo, that's a good echo in there, So I decided to ask if I could bring my tape recorder in there and make a tape on the weekend, and this is 1960 or 61. They said, okay. So I went in, I made this tape. I went over and over. If I didn't like the song, I re-recorded it. I had a little tape recorder like that, a Sony, tiny reel-to-reel deal.
Yeah.
About 7 songs I put on there. And now I was in New Rochelle. I knew nobody. I knew nothing. I just had this weird dream in my head, and I had fallen in love with a group called the Weavers.
Yeah.
And by this time...
Folk group? The Weavers were a folk.
The Weavers, who did this, Irene Goodnight, Whim Away, This Land Is Your Land, The Rock Island Line, 100 hits. And they were blacklisted in the 50s. And they came back in the mid-50s. So anyway, I knew their manager. By this time was a guy named Harold Leventhal. Harold Leventhal was the guy that they do the movie The Mighty Wind about. If you've ever seen The Mighty Wind, the movie.
Oh, yes.
It's a comedy.
It's phenomenal.
That's the story of actually Harold Leventhal.
Is it really?
Yeah, who was the impresario in New York over all of these folk musicians.
It's the Christopher Guest movie. It's the Christopher Guest movie. He does all
That's
the same,
correct.
characters.
It's that's really about Harold Leventhal and this tribute they're trying to give to him. So anyway, my uncle was in the silk importation business, and I would read. There was nothing, you couldn't find out anything about anybody in 1960. So I was always digging around trying to find out a little nugget of information. So I find out that Harold Leventhal went back to the rag trade, and his brother was in it as well, bras and girdles and things.
The fun stuff.
When he got blacklisted, so because he didn't have a group anymore. So I made this tape, and I went to my uncle, and I said, do you think you could find Harold Leventhal's brother and give this tape to him, and maybe he could give it to Harold Leventhal? And now this is 1962, and my uncle said, Donnie, I'll do my best, So I didn't hear anything. So 1963 comes along, and I graduate. 1964, I go to college. I last about 4 minutes, and I go back home. And the big thing that was happening now was the Beatles had hit the States. And I'm back home. I want to be in show business. I don't know how to get started. I don't know what to do. I'm sitting around. My mother's yelling at me, do something. All of a sudden, the phone rings, and it's Harold Leventhal's office. They had gotten this tape.
Uncle pulled through.
And they called me and said, we'd like you to come into New York. We think that you have talent. We'd like to work with you. Can you imagine that? Nobody has a weirder story than that. So I go into town, and I'm going in there every day. And they're taking the 8x10s, for the delicatessen, and they're getting the bio together. There's no bio because I've never done anything.
There's nothing to bio.
They're making up this stuff, and known all over Westchester,
By his friends.
They're making this stuff up, and I'm just going with the flow. It's so fascinating what was happening to me. It's like a dream. And just to tell you, it continued on. Started doing showcases. I didn't even know what a showcase was. At the Gaslight, the Bitter End, the cafe, whatever it was. And they'd bring down agents. So I'm in the middle of I'm this year off from school. I'm getting opening acts where I'm working with other people. I'm always the third act on a 3-act bill. But I'm on stage, and the thing is, I started developing Don McLean, the act known as Don McLean. And that's what it is. Started trying things out. This failed, that failed, but that succeeded. Look what happened when it did that. Look what happened. It's like magic. You're out there trying to figure out how to communicate with an audience. And it's a whole new thing. I never even knew what that word meant. I thought you went out and you played a bunch of songs, one after the other, and that was it. But that's not what you do. you read the audience, and this is where I began to learn how to do this. And I had a great guy named Charles Close who worked at the office of Harold Leventhal's office, and he would say, that worked, this didn't. Don't say that. This didn't do good. You didn't, and we would sit and go over everything. So this is a process. You don't just happen with a hit record.
Yeah.
This is 1962 or 3 or 4, all right? The first album I made is 1970, Tapestry.
Tapestry. Yeah.
And all those years went by. I got out of college because I figured, I went to college at the same time. I was connected with all this stuff because I figured I'm not going to hang around and have my mother yelling at me, for 4 years. I got to do something as well as this. So I got a degree. And in '68, I went back full time. Now I knew I'd never use the degree, but I ended up using it. And went back, and that album came out, and all of a sudden now, instead of being the first act on a 3-act bill, I'm headlining.
Yeah.
It took 10 years.
Everyone thinks it's overnight, right?
And I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Because it took 10 years to learn how to do it.
It's a craft. You're building.
Exactly. And then that doesn't even talk about writing songs.
Sure.
Or making personal appearances. Or doing interviews or whatever, where you know how to use an interview in order to get a point across. That's an art form. So anyway, that's a long-winded explanation.
No, that's why we're here.
I got here.
It's amazing that even at that age, though, you were figuring out stagecraft like that. At such a young age.
I was completely touched. I had the Catholic Church would say, you have a vocation to be a priest or a nun. You have a calling. This is my calling.
This is it.
There was nothing else in my life but this. It was my calling. Anything else that I learned was always in order to use it to write a song about it or to learn something about how other people. I'm interested in how other people live, how other people think. I'm interested in their lives, what goes on with them. There's so much attention paid to celebrities, and most celebrities are pretty one-dimensional, including me. But most people have enormous amounts of responsibility, and they're very fine folks. And I love knowing their stories, so I like talking to them.
And do you incorporate that when you write?
Yeah.
Other people's, loosely speaking, their stories? And did you approach writing the same way that you approach stagecraft? Did you break it down like that and slowly build into the process, or was it more natural for you?
I was brought up in a family. You've already gotten an idea of my parents, where it was basically don't do that, or you can't do that, or you're probably not very going to do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. God, don't do that. And I was also, New Rochelle was a very white, middle class, basically pretty snooty place, so that anybody who would ever try to be a folk singer or a rock and roll singer that came from where I came from would not only be rejected, but humiliated and condescended to, and that happened. When I quit school, I lost every friend I had.
Really?
Yeah, people would walk by me on the street. They didn't even know me.
I bet they all came back, though.
Yeah, I was back with my mother, living in an apartment, and we lost the house, and my father, had died and all this stuff, and the people would say, I'd say, hey, Jim, okay, off you go. So, of course, when American Pie hit, Jim says he knows you.
Yeah. It's amazing how
tell
many best
Jim to fuck
you
off, okay? And that's exactly what I did. You had one chance, and that was it.
Yeah, you blew your chance. It is, it's saying that, it is, as a celebrity, your name, as a celebrity, your name has a currency attached to it, right? And so and forgive me for going a slightly different direction, but friendships become tricky. Relationships become tricky because you are
impossible.
You can't know their true intentions at times because you are famous and people want to know you.
Well, that's true, and but I was a lone wolf. When my father died, I didn't want to be close to people because it hurt so much that I didn't want to have that pain again. So I really withdrew into my music was like therapy for me. And I wasn't writing songs. Again, I had this idea that, you know, and that's the reason I didn't work with anybody, because I can't get along with anybody. I have to do it my way. So I didn't feel like, you know, you look at these Beatles videos and how much they love each other and how they work with each other, and they do, you know, and how they overcome, and it's the four of them together. And I think that John Lennon said that Elvis Elvis is like a huge version of me in some ways, but he didn't write songs, but he had it all on his shoulders. And you know, when I hit, it's always all been on my shoulders really since my father passed away. I was the boss at that point. Sure. I grew up that night when I was 15. Yeah. I had to tell my mother what to do, you know, and it was painful. Yeah. But you simply have to do what you have to do. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm sure all these people out here would agree with me, is that we don't have that attitude in America anymore. Everybody has, oh, woe is me, you know, and well, tough shit. Yeah. You know, fix it. Yeah. You know, suck it up, move on, leave it alone. Yeah. You know, and you got a great day today coming. Don't be looking at the past and all that stuff, unless there's something you can do about it. And so I was always busy building. You know, I was after making that first record. Oh, my God, that was like the holy grail, you know, to get that Tapestry album out. And when it came out, major step forward. Sure. And then American Pie came so fast that I was known. All of a sudden, I'm getting calls to play in India, you know, and Africa.
Well, it blew up within like 2 weeks, didn't it?
World famous everywhere.
Within weeks.
Within minutes, it was #1. They gave me a lot of money. I became a millionaire when I was 27.
Perfect. What could go wrong?
And ever since then, it's been just work and things and wonderful stuff. And believe me, I know that I have been blessed. I don't think anything of myself much. I think more of the people that struggle. I had a funny story. I knew a guy named Nick Reynolds, and he was a singer in the Kingston Trio, the original Kingston Trio, who had 5 albums on the top 10 at the same time in 1958. No one's ever done that. There's a sort of a virtual group around now that's awful, and you know, they're people, but they're terrible. But the original group was a genius group. And no, they were with Dave Guard, and Nick had retired, and I was his friend, and he had like part of his tongue taken out, and he had a stroke, and he would kind of talk like this. And he's the guy who sang the MTA and a lot of their hits. You know, hey, let me tell you the story. That's Nick. So I was on the phone with him, and I was talking. I said, you know, I don't think I ever really paid that many dues. You know, I made the first record, and all of a sudden I was headlining these places. The second record, I was known everywhere. He said, we didn't pay many dues either. And then he paused for a moment. He said, if you have to pay too many dues, you don't have any talent.
That's a hell of a way of looking at it.
How many of these people you're still sitting? Pete Best, you know, he's still out there, you know. I don't know.
Facts. You brought up American Pie. Obviously, for many, many years, there was a lot of concepts and ideas and inflection as to what you meant with the song. And I know you played it kind of cagey for a while.
Well, you have to see the movie.
It's great.
That's the answer I give now.
Yeah, it is
because you got to see the movie. That tells you everything about how that song was created. And I didn't even realize it took me 10 years to write it. Yeah. See, I never realized that until I made that documentary. Is that I was thinking from the day Buddy Holly died, when I was a paper boy, and that was right in front of our house in New Rochelle. From the day that happened, I was in mourning for Buddy Holly. And I was this little boy that had these strange ideas about everything, and not like other people that I knew, because I couldn't share this stuff with people. I would always think about him. I would find out more. And again, you couldn't find out anything about anyone. So there wasn't a book about Buddy Holly. There wasn't anything. So you'd learn a little of this and learn a little of that. And through the 60s, and now I was growing slowly. 64, I'm out of school. 65, I'm in 68, I'm in college, and I'm up with Seeger on the Hudson. Then he takes me to the Newport Folk Festival with a bunch of kids to sing with him, sea shanties, and the Everly Brothers were there in '69. It's all in the movie, and you can see me singing in 1969 at I don't know where they found this footage, but there I am. I remembered it, but there I'm seeing it. You can see it. So I go up to the Everly Brothers because I knew they were friends with Buddy Holly. I knew that the Crickets backed the Everlys after Buddy had passed away in that crash. And I asked Phil Everly, I said, what do you think happened? This is in the movie. And Phil said, well, don't you know that Buddy took the plane to do his laundry? And that did it. All that thinking, this little mind of mine, for all those years, I said, my God, he was just a guy, and he had to do his laundry. And he had other people's laundry with him, too. And it was all a hard slog, and I had now gotten a little bit of an indication of what kind of slog it was because I was now in show business and
you were
working
going through it, too.
More, and I'm getting it, you know. So I went home to that little house I lived in, and again, this is all in the movie, and I wrote a long, long time ago, right up through till the day the music died, the melody, everything came out of me just like that. And it was like a genie came out of a bottle.
Yeah.
I said, holy shit. I said, what is that? What am I going to do with it? It was so exciting. I was thinking about it all the time. I wasn't telling anybody anything. And then I came up with the chorus, and then 3 months later, I wrote the whole thing in an hour and a half and did it. But, when you get down the road like I am, and you always see these great actors and, Scorsese and De Niro, they're always together. Yeah, we made Goodfellas, remember? That's all you ever do is talk about what you did.
What you did.
I don't have a new album coming out. I've got new songs. I like to talk about what I did, but I'm busy, and they are too. But I'm just saying it's something that happens. You become overwhelmed, really, with the history.
Sure.
Your own history. And
sure.
It starts to be something that you talk about a lot.
Well, your history, I think it is, your history shaped people's lives in a lot of ways.
It did what?
It shaped people's lives.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, sure it did. It's the soundtrack. Many people, American Pie is really the other national anthem. It's referred to as that, America's other national anthem.
Well, that's very touching.
It means something to people. So your history isn't just random history, it's iconic. It's meaningful.
It was also incredibly lucky and accidental.
Listen, that's how most
that's
history
why I told you
is.
the tape story.
Yeah, please.
Because if I hadn't gotten that phone call when I was 18,
Mr. Leventhal,
and had the biggest guy you have no idea how big folk music was in the early 60s. It was way bigger than rock and roll. Elvis Presley was a has-been at that time. And all that stuff. It was over. It was 50s stuff. Now they're talking about, singing these songs, and Joan Baez is singing these ballads, and all these college kids are turned on to this stuff before the Beatles came in and turned everything around again. But there was this moment from like 58 to like 63 or 4. It was huge. And he was the main guy. And if he hadn't called me, I don't know what would have happened, but that happened. It turned me all around. Suddenly I was going to school.
Yeah.
And right with the people I love. The Weavers, I knew all of them. They all became like family to me. I would never be here now without them. I knew them all. And they gave me so much love and encouragement. And they were all different, very different people.
It's I feel like a lot of great history is accidental to a certain, a lot of the greatest stories come from either an accident or what could have been type of moment. And I think that's part of what makes the story so wonderful,
Well, I'll tell you something about America, and that song American Boys Invented Rock and Roll is the title of this album, and we invented jazz, we invented blues, we invented rock and roll, we invented most of popular music. The English did their share, was for sure, but it's a shame that we are not made more aware of the phenomenal things our country is doing and has done, and we're always being, put down for something. And this is a very ultra left-wing technique to make people lose faith in themselves, to be ashamed of themselves. We have nothing. This country is phenomenal. I want that song, and I want to do interviews all over the world and say, hey, I'm sorry, Sir Rod and Sir Paul and the rest of you sirs, but this is our music and we invented it, okay? And you did a great job, regurgitating it, and I love all your songs, but we invented it in this country. Why? It's in the ground, man. There's no place like Memphis in England.
I had Dave Mason up here yesterday, and Dave was saying the exact same thing.
You're not going to find Louisiana in Scotland.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't care how much you like.
No bayou.
What?
No bayou in Scotland.
No, you're not going to find it. It's just, we're Americans, man, and they're all like me, crazy. Do different things.
It takes a little bit of crazy.
Try something new, whatever,
You mentioned your new album. It's coming out here in a couple of months. Talk to us a little bit about the new album.
Well, it's got a ballad of George Floyd on it, which nobody else has done. And as somebody asked me, well, isn't it a lot like the 60s now? And I said, no, because, at least 5 people would have done a ballad about this event that occurred. Yeah. And so, of course, I did, and it's good. And got a lot of other things in there. There's a song called the Marleys song, Save Yourself, which is... It's taken from the Christmas Carol, but I feel it's an important song for me. And I don't like talking about my own stuff, but you'll hear it. I'm sure you'll hear American Boys. Actually, anything if you go Google, if you go to Don McLean or you go to YouTube and put my name in, they'll talk about the American Boys album, and if you scroll down, you can hear it, American Boys, so you can get an idea. But
it's coming out in a couple of months, and we have
6 weeks, actually.
6 weeks,
yeah.
Okay, forgive me. And we do have, if there are any left, I think there was 10 advance copies brought on. So if you are interested, if they're still available, they're going to be available right at the entrance. And afterward,
they're back to inventing the wheel again.
Yes. Vinyl, yeah. It's popular again.
You have to get some tubes.
It's very popular again.
Why?
It's it totally has come back. What's all this?
Well, if they could find a way to get the vinyl sound without having to use a needle and a turntable, and have it last longer, you'd really be into something, because if you go buy a Beach Boys album, let's say, that's still sealed, and it was made in 1965, let's say you have the Beach Boys Today, which has, Good to My Baby and all these great songs on it, and that was released in 1965, and you put that on a turntable, that is the last word that Brian Wilson had on that record. If you get that same record on a CD, it's going to be screwed around with. Some kid is going to take it as, I can make that sound better. Yeah, right.
Turn this up or that down.
And they immediately mess it up, because it doesn't take much when you master a recording to ruin the whole thing. And I'll explain what that means to you. When you mix a record, you have, let's say, 24 different musicians making music. They're all isolated. The producer takes those 24 musicians and blends them all together, and the producer in this case would have been Brian Wilson, blends them all together, gives them the echo that he wants, gives them the colors that he wants, blends that whole picture together, and makes a 2-track master. The 2-track master has all of those 24 different instruments blended and fixed now, stereo. Now you master that, and the way they do that is they bring out little parts of things, bass, mid-range, and so on, accentuating something, but it's not a major operation like moving an instrument. Well, this is what happened when they lost all these tapes. They lost 700,000 master tapes at Universal big fire.
Yeah.
You'll never be able to go into those recordings and break them down to the instruments that were there. You'll only have the 2-track master on those songs. So that's a tremendous loss that they don't talk about.
It's some real history. The history of music in a lot of ways was lost in that fire, and it was way more tragic than I think people accredit it to being.
Well, I don't like it when things are stored, and you have to trust people with stuff.
Sure.
I had all my stuff at home. I had it
Good
in
for
a
you.
barn. It was there for years and years, and then I had it. I had the audios, 24-track tapes that are like that big. They weigh like 20 pounds.
Yeah, they're big. They're monsters.
I had them, put into little. So it's broadcast wave, or I have just about everything I've ever done on broadcast wave or radar, and I have copies in Nashville in 2 different places. So I can go back to anything. When we did that re-release of the Christmas record, and we'll do another one, the last stuff next year, we went into those tapes. They're all right there. I could break those apart,
Do you go back into your older music ever and listen and play? Or
there's some things I just didn't like, and I could fix it now. So
that's got to be a great feeling.
It really is.
To know you can go back and, oh, you know what, that...
It really is. It's so easy. I mean, in the old days when you made records, you had to have extra hands around because you had 24 tracks, and they each have a little volume
slider
that slides up on the board. I need 4 guys up here because we're going to bring these strings up now.
Everyone's hands at the same time.
Like that. Now, and then if you forgot the mix and you started over, you had to make little marks on this console, so you brought them up to the same point at the same time, and now it's all locked in a computer. Just go back. And the records stink. They really do, because they don't have the effort in them, and they don't have the people in them. They're going to replace everything with artificial intelligence. It's going to be awful. You're not going to know what's who and who's what, and you're not going to know what's where.
You lose the humanity of it.
You're not going to have any identity for anything.
Yeah.
It's happening.
What is next for you when you leave here? What's next on the list?
I'm going to sing at a casino in Chicago, and then I've got regular things going. I've been asked to come to Oxford University and speak.
Oh.
Can you imagine that? They have a speakers series.
Especially with your thoughts on England.
Where they I'll say it there.
Yes, you will, and I love it.
That's why I'm going.
What are you speaking on? What do they want you? What are they asking you to speak about? What do they want you to speak?
No, they're just going to ask me about this kind of stuff, career and songs and whatnot, and point of view of things.
Last question I'll ask you before I know we got to get you out there to sign some autographs. American Pie has been, it's like I said, it's referred to often as America's other national anthem. It was also voted as one of the top 5 songs of the century. I know you said a minute ago that when you were writing it and it was in your head for all those years that you knew something was there. Did you know all of this was there, though?
This thing has grown over the years. I was reacted against after that song came out. That song came out, and then Rolling Stone attacked me, and they tried to kill my career. Lots of people have tried to kill my career, and they've never done it. They just
you can't kill
seem
good
to
music.
keep me down. And now I think it's funny, but it wasn't funny then. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They really trashed me, and that stupid Jan Wenner is still. He said a bunch of bad things about female musicians and everything. Finally, people are getting onto this guy. He's gone anyway. But I outlived the son bitch. You know what I mean?
The ultimate get back.
That's the way. Yeah, that's what you got to do. But anyway, what was your question?
No, I was just asking if you foresaw this level of success for American Pie back then, even though you said you're excited about it.
Like I say, it's had ups and downs. Yeah. It's been fascinating because I call it Donnie's Comet.
I like
like
it.
8 or 9 years, here it comes. Here comes American Pie.
Somebody does a remaster of it.
It was a big thing, and then it blew up, and a lot of negative against me. Him, that's that. Get rid of it. Then Vincent came out. Yeah, he's not so bad, isn't it? Vincent's song, the album's pretty good. So, then other songs, other albums, I started to get a little respect. And then a few years went by, and Crying, and Since I Don't Have You, and Castles in the Air. So I got more. So now they're putting me over here with the people who are possibly worthy of being in existence. And so it's been like that. And then, of course, when Garth had me on, that was a big burst for it. When Madonna recorded the song, a big burst for it. When that list came out, it was the first of many. Everybody does lists now.
Sure, lists. We all want
that
lists.
Was the master list. I'm going to tell you, the people doing that, they didn't like me much either. They didn't like that song. But the guy running it, was a real snooty, rock and roll writer. And he said, I don't know how, I was amazed. The people came back with this. They wanted, that was a song that they felt belonged in that top 5. So that was, again, the people's choice. It has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me manipulating or orchestrating anything. There's never been any money spent on me by record companies or anybody else. It's all in my head. And I've sent brainwaves out with these songs, and they've communicated with people, and they've kept things going, and that's it.
I mean, ultimately, yeah, that is. I mean, ultimately, if you connect with your audience, like you said in the very beginning, that's where you win, right? That's where you individually, Don McLean, win.
Now we're getting these articles about Vincent being Tupac Shakur's favorite song.
Yeah.
That it was played in the hospital when he was in a coma.
Yeah. I read
these
that.
stories start coming out, and they're very powerful.
Very.
And this makes the song even more of separates it from other songs.
You know you're successful when Weird Al does a parody of your song. That means you've made it, so.
Weird Al
he's a great guy.
Weird Al is one of the least weird people you ever want to meet. He's a very normal, beautiful guy, and he's just a regular person who's... I like him and he likes me. Everybody that knows him speaks so highly of him, but the general perception of him is the Weird Al persona, but everyone speaks incredibly highly. He's a homeboy all the way. Yeah. I want to say thank you very much. My pleasure. For being on the cruise, and thank you for taking your time with us. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this. Thank you. All my friends, do me a favor, put your hands together for the fabulous Don McLean.